Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ advised us not to do things excessively, even reading Quran, even praying Qiyamul Layl. Don't do things excessively. And with everything in ibadah, you have to build up on it. You have to start slow and build on it. It's like playing sport. You can't go and run a marathon if you haven't trained to run the marathon. And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The deeds most loved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those done regularly, even if they are small, even if they are little. So there's a lot of wisdom in that. Is if you do your ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not necessarily look at the quantity of our ibadah. Allah looks at the sincerity within our hearts during the ibadah. Sometimes you can do a lot of things, but you're not really there spiritually and mentally and physically. The thing that I was going to mention is for the sister to evaluate what has changed in her life recently. What are the things that are influencing her to drift away from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All of us from time to time we need to assess what are we engaged in, what is taking up our time, what is influencing us, the people that we hang out with, the things that we do. Evaluate that, assess them, and is there something particular that is taking us away from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and rectify that, change it, replace it with something beneficial. That is a fiqh question which you should probably ask Sheikh Tawfiq next Wednesday. Yeah, the brother is also making an important point that if, for some of our sisters who are new to the deen, the initial few months or years are very difficult, and people do go through those difficult stages, and that's normal. So they need to just persevere and strive and work through that, inshallah. But it's also important who's in the support, who's supporting the sister. So again, who your friends are, who's worried about you, who's looking after you. And all of us, we need people to look out for us. Like Mahdi Bracelet, when he came here from the States, who's got your back? Right? Who's motivating us? Who's encouraging us to do this? To be committed to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who's calling you up? Who's reminding you, brother, come do this? Come join us. Because those are important people in your life. Because without those people, you'd be like the lost stray sheep that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about, that is easy prey for the wolf.
Say, for example, just an example, like, you get up late in the morning, because I've been dreaming about something, like a girl or something. You get up, you're in work, you tell them you're sick, but you lose your job if you go late. These happen sometimes. Very rarely, but they happen. You get up late, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, your work doesn't tolerate late.
Speak the truth.
Speak the truth.
And all this calling, this whole city concept, don't fall into that trap of using the city to do something you're not supposed to do. Only call in sick when you're sick. Even going for another job interview. Even going for another job interview. Because if you call in sick and you're going for another job interview, what's that? That's lying. So the best way, you've got two options. Either you've established a good relationship with your boss, and you go and tell your boss that I'm looking for another job, and you explain to your boss why you're looking for another job, because then it makes it easier for you to go and tell your boss, listen, I'm going for another job interview. That's the first option. The second option is, okay, you haven't done that, or you feel that if you were to tell your boss that you're looking for another job, it would jeopardize your current position, and that sometimes is valid, then take an annual day's leave. Take an annual day's leave, or if you've got rostered RDOs, take your rostered day off. There are many options, truthful options. The problem is, we always sometimes just try to resort to the wrong options. White light. Yeah, white light. White light. Ah, white light. In fact, I am getting tired, aren't you? A white line, as opposed to a black one. That whole concept is very racist anyway. That it's okay for the white man to tell a small lie. That's why they, I don't know. There's no such thing as a small lie or big lie. Lie's a lie. Do you have to do what? Do you have to do iqamah for qada prayer? That's another third question. I suggest you come next Wednesday and ask Sheikh Tawfiq.
You mentioned deception and lying.
Now the deception that I was talking about before from the Prophet ﷺ, Islam only gives specific cases where deception is allowed. It's only allowed in war, is one case. So deception is allowed in war. And I responded to Jim Ball. I said to Jim Ball that in the Australian Defence Manual is the principle of deception in war. In fact, the majority, in fact all contemporary armies today use deception as an art of war. And the Australian Defence Force has it defined to what extent they're allowed to use deception in war. In fact, the International Code of War also specifies what is deception. For example, things that are not allowed in war is you cannot use, an opposing enemy cannot use the Red Cross ambulance or the insignia of the Red Cross ambulance or the Red Crescent as a means to get to their enemy. That is against international code of war. So that kind of deception is not allowed. But where you're using camouflage and using stealth bombers to not be detected by radar and things like that, that is permissible under the codes of war.
Regarding lying, there are certain instances where a person's life is in. I was in the understanding that if you lie, protect safety.
Yeah, the exceptions that I spoke about before also fit into that same category. One of them is where it's a matter of life and death. So in that situation where it's a matter of life and death, then the person, for example, may lie and give a false testimony about his actual status as a Muslim. It is obvious, it is of course preferred not to do that. The preference is for a Muslim always to be truthful, even under the situation where his own life is being threatened. But sometimes a person might find himself in a state of weakness, where to protect his life he does that. But he doesn't really believe it, so he is just saying something to protect his life.
What about the case where the wife cooks some food and you find the cake and in order not to...
MashaAllah, the brothers are mentioning all the exceptions to the lying rule. And that's a very important one. For the brothers who are not married yet, you need to learn this one. Okay, this one is very important. And it's when the wife cooks something, but this applies to the wives as well. When the husband cooks something. The husband may be doing the barbie outside, right? Anyway, if the wife or the husband is cooking something, the other spouse can, in order to keep the peace at home, not disclose the truth of the meal. Okay? And that's very important. The Prophet ﷺ has allowed that. In a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it is allowed in order to keep the peace at home. You don't disclose the truth of the matter. The wife may have been spending the whole day sewing a new dress for herself to look beautiful for you when you come home from work. And then when you come in and the wife says, "How do I look, honey?" And then if you're going to speak the truth, there's going to be a major drama at home, right? So that's where some wisdom needs to come into play there. Okay, no more questions? جزاك الله خيرا ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت
Sorry, this football that you give lectures, is it possible to get some of the notes on it? Email.